Hims and Hers stock is up by over 40% since the start of this year. And as a result, I've been getting messages like crazy whether to buy the stock or something they should skip because it has such a massive run up in valuation. Today, we're going to run some numbers and see if this stock is worth buying or something that we should skip. But before we get started, please hit that like, follow, and subscribe button. And with that being said, let's get started. These are the current metrics of Hims and Hers. For us to get an idea what the price will be by 2030, we need to analyze what these metrics will be by 2030. In the last 12 months, Hims and Hers had a revenue of almost $1.2 billion, and it's been consistently increasing its revenue like an absolute rocket ship. If you take a look at the growth rate, it's above 20 every quarter. With this information, we can hypothesize that this company is set up to multi-x its revenue in the near future. We just need to analyze what that number will be. For those projections, we're going to go to LLMs and get an idea of what that could be. First, we're going to ask ChatGPT, and it thinks it can have a revenue of $5.10 billion, and analysts are projecting a revenue of almost $2.3 billion by 2026. So a $5.10 billion revenue is actually very reasonable. Gemini is a bit too optimistic. I don't think that it's going to reach an $8.8 billion in revenue. It could happen, but it's heavily relying on theory and trend rather than making an assumption. So we're gonna discount that because it's a bit too high for my liking. Next one asks DeepSeek, and DeepSeek gives us a very similar number to what OpenAI projects. And lastly, we're gonna ask Claude, and Claude gives us a very similar number to DeepSeek and OpenAI. So for future revenue growth, I'm gonna say that its revenue is gonna increase by 300%, which is almost $5 billion by year 2030. Next, we're gonna take a look at number of outstanding shares. Now this company did recently go public, so that's why you see a massive jump from 35 million to 153 million. So we're going to start from the IPO stocks. At IPO, it was 153 million to now being 235 million, which is a net increase of about 35%. So it diluted you by 35% in the last 3 years. Now, I do have to emphasize one thing. Its dilution is nothing compared to the revenue growth they had. It's only diluted you by 35%, while multi-xing its revenue. If I'm an investor, I'm actually happy they were able to utilize capital this efficiently. But I do see this being repeated again over the next 5 years. I think they're going to do another dilution of 30%, well, 5xing its revenue from today. Again, something that I am absolutely okay with. And lastly, its margin of profit is 8%. Now, this is because it's reinvesting all the money it makes to grow its operations, revenue, and subscriber base. So by year 2030, I expect this company to have a margin of profit of 20 to 30%. I think it's going to even far exceed 30% because they won't have reallocate that capital to grow their user base. So I'm going to say 30% is a very reasonable margin of profit by 2030. With all these core metrics hypothesized and analyzed, we get an intrinsic stock price of $146 by 2030, which means you will almost 4x your money if you invest in Hims and Her by 2030 if these metrics play out the way that we are hypothesizing. I see this service being a dominant player in the healthcare industry. Now, for me personally, I won't invest in it, not because of the data or the analytics, but this is outside of my circle of confidence. And if I were to invest in this company, I feel like I would sell this company premature because I don't really understand the products and services at extreme detail. But if you're someone that does understand it, the financials are beautiful and they're on the path of giving you a multiple return by 2030. I would definitely invest in this company if you understand its products and services. Well, guys, that is it for this analysis. Please like, follow, and subscribe. And if you want to check out some exclusive content, please consider subscribing to my Patreon.